they go with content, we'll try to get to them immediately. If not, we'll definitely leave some time at the end to go over. We'll also have a live poll, so I'll be launching that in just a second. But first, what we're going to cover today, we're just going to quickly go over what is headless commerce, some of the benefits of it, and then we'll break down both the Shopify side and Gatsby side, how they work together. And then, like I said, we'll be launching a live demo. We'll kind of go through starting from a Gatsby starter, kind of wiring it all up and working together. So just before we begin, I'm going to launch the poll. We'll give like 30 seconds. I might launch the poll. Aaron, if you were there and could help launch the poll, that would be awesome, because it appears I cannot.
We've got it. The poll's up.
All right. Awesome. Awesome.
Team effort.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I cannot see the poll. Oh, there we go. Now I can see the poll. So I can't share my screen and see the poll. That's good. We almost have everyone filled out. All right, perfect. I will, oops, sorry, we're gonna share it live. Most people filled out, not much here to learn, so that's great, because we have a good intro to get some bearings here. And then I think the live demo will also let people really see what is going on. So while we start this, let's, Morgan, do you wanna introduce yourself a bit and just say hi to the audience that usually hears my voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey everyone, welcome. And my name is Morgan. As Dan said, I'm a product lead at Shopify focused on custom storefronts. So helping to enable all of our merchants and the developers, working with them to build custom storefront solutions. Really, that can mean anything from websites to mobile apps to voice shopping experiences, you name it. That's the beauty of an API.
Awesome. Well, we're appreciate you coming on today. And I'm sure the audience, like I said, is excited to hear from you. All right, so let's start out with quick intro, which is awesome for our audience here to learn. What is headless commerce? We'll first talk about and break down the monolithic, which is kind of the traditional way to do not only commerce, but a lot of things on the internet. We've seen this come about in the last like 2 decades, where everything that the functionality of the website or the application has is wrapped up into one system. So it usually involves a closed like web server that's attached to the app server itself. And that app server is dealing data from databases that are connected. And those databases are all, again, living in kind of one environment. The data's shared, the security is shared, and everything sits inside our little box here. Now, when a user interacts with the monolithic system, that monolithic system kind of updates as an entire entity. So again, when a user requests a new car, a new item, that monolithic system is going to go fetch everything kind of in serial. It can definitely certainly be multi-threaded, but again, it's thinking about things in a like serial manner and in a monolithic stand. So to kind of combat that, we have what is headless. And headless is just a name for kind of a decoupled architecture. We'll be going in and out of using, I think, those 2 words. We'll also be saying custom storefront on the Shopify side. But really what headless is all about is breaking down the different layers of that monolithic application. So headless has this front end and back end where that would have been connected before in the monolithic stance. The front end and the back end are very much torn apart by and glued together via the API layer. So we can connect different systems, different backends, different services into that API layer, and then show it on the front end. The front end layer is, in this case, we'll be talking a lot about Gatsby. And in the back end, we'll be talking a lot about Shopify's functionality and their storefront API in particular. But also with headless, you can put together different systems and have this kind of best of breed functionality. It's really all about composable functionality. So it's something like Morgan was talking about, where if an API can interact with it and you can extract the data from an API, then it really works in a headless environment. You can start to bring together tools that previously were never brought together. They may have had to live separately in a different environment, let's say like store.domain.com or documentation.domain.com. All these traditionally have been different monolithic systems. With headless functionality, we can start to bring that together because each piece of it is a composable piece. And then the benefits of headless commerce are kind of threefold here. The first is speed. Headless architecture gives us the ability to separate the back end and the front end, which really allows us to optimize that front end itself. We can serve it statically on a CDN. And again, a lot of the JS, CSS, HTML, all that is going to be minimized, optimized out of the box in a way that a monolithic system will really struggle at, because again, it's tied from the front end to the back end, and it requires that to carry through the entire build, deploy, and then the usage process. Next is the control portion. Just having the unlimited control of a decoupled architecture, I think, is a huge advantage to a lot of online businesses, and especially storefronts. You're going to be able to use features, use any functionality that you can see, again, use an API. You're going to be able to use that on your website. You're going to be able to connect that to the front end. You're going to be able to manipulate data in a way that maybe you couldn't in a monolithic system previous. And then lastly is that developer experience. Again, by decoupling the back end and the front end, you can really have content creators, business personnel really focus, let's say, on the back end, worry about the shipping, worry about the product catalog in Shopify's case, also worrying about the content in, like, let's say you're using a headless CMS like Contentful or just WordPress. That whole backend process, the whole content process is in an isolated environment and can really be used by those creators. Then on the front end, you're going to have your development and more proper, like, the developer experience, where they're going to be using the tools that they want to use. They want to be using a workflow with Git, have a version control system, use React, use front end technologies that enable their data to be quicker, use things like Webpack, again, compiling things in just a much faster way. But again, stay out of kind of that monolithic tied in universe and stay in a more flexible, composable way where you can use your best of breed tools that maybe you've used on a custom site, maybe you've used on an app. You can now bring that to the website or to the web, and you can start using tools like Shopify, Zendesk, WordPress, all these things that have traditionally been monolithic. And we'll talk a little bit about Shopify as a more broad platform. But all of these things can be used with your modern tooling that you want to use today.
So just before we jump away from this slide, Dan, I actually want to touch on the speed portion, because I can see there's a comment in here from Jeremy about speed, and that's specifically a reason why they're looking at headless. And I think that's often a point that gets debated quite a bit, and for good reason. There are challenges when it comes to the monolithic architecture in terms of the speed that you're experiencing with your websites, and often that's because we've seen folks go in and try to customize portions of their site, but they don't know exactly what they're doing. And so it can lead to performance degradation. So I want to emphasize that speed from the headless perspective, actually you have even more control than you would have out of the box with some monolithic approach. And that can be really great if you know what you're doing. And for anybody who knows web performance, it's a complicated beast, and there's a lot of different levers that you can pull. And if you know which ones to pull, it's fantastic to be able to do your own caching strategy, depending on the content that you want to cache, for example. However, there are some benefits to using like an out-of-the-box approach, where there's some standards that we have in place. But really, this comes down to the developer experience that you have in a headless approach, where you can choose to go much deeper into certain layers of web performance.
And I would say in general, even outside of speed, Morgan, like that's the plus and minus of all headless architecture is, like,
exactly,
if you can roll it yourself and you can do it, the options are going to be boundless. Like, you're really going to be able to go deep where you and the business need to go deep. But it also comes with, like you said, there's trade-offs. You need some experience. There's also, just in general, a lot more development work needed.
Yes, sometimes more options means more problems, but this is where partners like yourselves help to come in to kind of pave a path into a specific option to make it a little bit easier if you do choose to go down that headless route. So
Exactly. So let's talk about actually Shopify next.
yeah, let's jump into that. So for those who aren't familiar with Shopify, we are a commerce platform that serve over 1.7 million merchants across over 175 countries. And so we're seeing a lot of that representation in this chat. So that's amazing. Most folks think when they think of Shopify, they think of our out of the box solution, right? That online store product that we've had for since 2006, essentially. That is what the majority of our merchants use, but I really want to emphasize, if we jump to the next slide, that Shopify is a platform. So while we do have this out of the box solution, we're actually built on a platform that allows us to offer this, but also allows some of our merchants to work directly with the platform. So we think of it as a spectrum, really, where you have the no code kind of batteries included, out of the box, whatever you want to call it, monolith, my lesser of the favorite words there. So we have that, batteries included package. And there's so many words that I'm going to kind of shut down in this talk. And then, and then we're going to go to this low code or, where there's like some customization available, whether that's through our Liquid platform or using apps and themes to get deeper into customization. And then there's kind of the API first approach, which is what we'll focus our chat on here today. So that's really custom code. And that's why we actually call our product area custom storefronts as opposed to headless, because what are you selling if you don't have a head? The head is where the brain lives. You need to be smart about how you approach it. So let's jump into custom storefronts specifically. So custom storefronts as an area at Shopify offers the storefront GraphQL API as the bottom layer, as well, and our SDKs built on top of that. So Dan mentioned the gatsby SDK before. There's also our mobile SDKs. We have a few different wrappers around the API. And then coming soon, we'll have Hydrogen, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes. So our GraphQL API is actually one of the most popular GraphQL APIs in terms of traffic. All of Shopify is powered by GraphQL at this point. We kind of went deep into GraphQL in 2015, and we have over 1 million GraphQL calls per minute sustained traffic really on our platform. So that's huge. We love GraphQL for the volume it allows, but also for the specificity that we can get that we don't necessarily have with the REST API approach. The storefront API is really intended to give you access to those key primitives of your business. So those primitives are the ones that are going to power the buyer experience. So we have our admin API for merchant-facing functionality, and we have the storefront API for buyer-facing functionality. So as a buyer browsing a website, you need access to things like products, collections, customer accounts, and of course the checkout. And that's where the storefront API shines. It gives you the building blocks for that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our developer-facing conference, Shopify Unite. So if we hop over to the next slide, for those of you who are familiar with Shopify's ecosystem, Shopify Unite is our developer-facing conference. We had it at the end of June this year, and we announced some really great updates for custom storefronts. So while our API was launched in 2016 and we've been supporting headless merchants through it for over 5 years now, there's continuous improvements that need to be made, right? As commerce evolves, as the needs of our buyers change, we need to ensure that we're offering that functionality through our foundational layer of the storefront API, as well as offering developer tooling to make it easier to build these custom storefronts over time. So one announcement that we did share around that tooling was around Hydrogen. And Hydrogen, it's not yet released. It is coming soon, as you saw on the last slide. But this is really Shopify's opinionated quick start toolkit for building commerce experiences deployed on our platform to enable storefronts that are both dynamic and incredibly fast. So Hydrogen is built with Vite instead of Webpack and React Server components. So we're really kind of venturing into this new space of web development and working with the latest and greatest technologies that we can find to figure out how we create our own version of headless or custom storefronts. And the other update that I want to share is around the cart. So we talked about the storefront API and the primitives that it offers, and the cart is actually a new primitive that we've introduced. In the past, developers would have used the checkout object in order to create a cart. And there are challenges that come with using these very expensive queries with checkout, where you need to have 100% accuracy in terms of the pricing that you're showing. So by offering a cart primitive, we're actually optimizing for speed and for price transparency as opposed to 100% accuracy. So you're not subject to the throttling limits that you may have seen in the past around the checkout. And so from our cart, you then move into the checkout, where it's our standard web checkout that many buyers around the globe are familiar with. But the key here is that we're making it faster and less expensive in terms of queries. So we're removing that potential throttle that some of our flash selling merchants or large volume merchants have hit in the past. But really the point of having this platform, and if we jump to the next slide, is that there are many different ways to build a custom storefront. And the benefit of having the platform is that you can build anywhere, anyway. And so while Shopify will have our own take on maybe how we recommend building certain websites, or maybe we'll have the no-code solution for merchants at a certain level, really the beauty of having an ecosystem and having partners like Gatsby is that regardless of the path you choose to take, there are folks in the community that are helping to light up the path, so to speak, right? So Gatsby is here bringing some tooling into the mix that really help to enable folks who choose to go down the path of static site generation with some dynamic aspects. And yeah, maybe I'll transition it back to you now, Dan, so you can talk more about how merchants are using Gatsby and Shopify together.
Yeah, sure. And the card thing makes a lot of sense for us. Obviously, the querying and speed component. The example we'll use will not use that, but we are shifting over to it as it's just been launched.
Yeah, I should emphasize it was in unstable when we launched it at Unite, and as of yesterday, it is now in the stable release. So no worries there. I just want to encourage folks to look at that new approach as it will be locked in our upcoming API version.
Definitely. All right. So where does Gatsby come in this journey? And we can think about Gatsby being the glue between the front end of the user experience and, again, some of those services on the back end, like the e-commerce side or content or analytics, any of that. It's all going to be integrated kind of in the Gatsby data layer and then displayed in a static page or static site generation. So Morgan brought that up. Static site is our method of generating content today. It puts most of the tax of performance at build time. So you'll see when we make changes to the website, their build process could take anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute and a half. And that build process is going to happen on each change to the content or the data. But what it's going to allow is speed on the end user. So the site visitor is going to get a website that never has to make a call back to a live database for new information, unless you wanted to and you have a function. But the blazing responsiveness and speed is all because of that static side and some of the tax we put on upfront. So when we go through the site and responsiveness and then kind of the cloud portion of it, you'll see that. But it is all roped together in what we call a static site generation. And for the most part, what the Gatsby framework handles is all the hard parts of front-end development. So what we were talking about before is with Headless, when you tear it apart, there's going to be more options. You're going to be able to go deeper in aspects. For the front end side, what we really try to do is go deep and give you the tools out of the box to help with things like speed, performance, security, scalability, accessibility for sure, data management, integrations. These are all things that decisions that have to be made by front end development teams, new plugins that have to be developed, new functionality that has to be taken to get built. All these things are handled by the Gatsby framework out of the box. We have a plugin infrastructure that has over 2,500 plugins. We have starter templates that we'll go through today that get you kind of loaded out of the gate and gets from 0 to 1 much faster. But all these things are opinionated choices made by the Gatsby framework to help you go fast and ship more features. So the 4 things that kind of work together from our framework to cloud is we allow you with our data layer, which is powered by GraphQL. Like Morgan said, we are also huge fans of GraphQL. We went in hard when the framework came out, and we've really never looked back. But it allows you and it gives you this foundation of how we handle data in the framework, and allows you to connect to any source. So let's say a Google Sheet, Shopify, data, content coming from WordPress, it is all fitting together in a relatively consistent manner because of our middle data layer. Next, we're going to work with modern tech and tooling. Like we talked about that DX experience, we're really trying to stay on the forefront of it. After that, we have a rich optimized web experiences. The Gatsby framework is designed to optimize images, to optimize media, really out of the gate. And then lastly, on our CDN, Gatsby Cloud, we allow for you to push your store to the edge. We're going to have this content delivery network with global points of presence. It's going to give you the fastest possible response time on that front end. The server and the edge layer that user is going to incur and request, it's just going to be a lot closer than that maybe 1 or 2 points of presence that you're going to get from a traditional web server, and let's say Northern Virginia. So these are kind of the aspects that work on the front end with Gatsby. And now we'll go through kind of the benefits of using both together. 6 things we'll walk through, and we'll kind of go through why they matter and why they are a benefit when used together. Faster page load speed. This is, again, the speed we were talking about. Because of the optimization on the front end and because of the static nature of the entire site, you're going to get a faster page load speed. The entire website is already on the user's browser. When you click around in a Gatsby site, you instantly see that speed, that snappiness. It feels like a native application. So it's really unlike anything else on the web when you do go to a static experience. Because of that, you're going to score higher in Lighthouse scoring. So you're going to get increased SEO traffic. You're going to be able to get organic traffic from Google, which is always cheaper. It's better ROI. Also, because of the static nature, you're going to rank really well for a crawler. Crawlers actually read our static page really well. All the HTML is right there up front, and it works super clean. Next is the ability to ship features faster. When you decouple the front end and the back end, that front end is allowed to move as fast as possible. Even with the back end, maybe making in lockdown, let's say, we can have a code freeze on the back end where no new items are being shipped. We can still make changes to the front end that aren't going to break our build. You're also going to have different teams be able to work on different front end features and have different teams work on different back end features. They're not going to trip over themselves, and they're going to be able to work in near isolation, but it's going to allow you to ship much faster. Next is integrating your favorite CMS. This is a lot about what we're talking about today. Shopify, your favorite e-commerce platform. It's incredibly easy. We'll go through the plugin infrastructure. We'll go through actually the Shopify sales channel that we have now. And it's going to take like under 2-3 minutes. We're going to have a working, statically rendered e-commerce experience powered by both Gatsby and Shopify. The last two are definitely huge for our enterprise customers. Customer data with static is going to be a lot safer. It's definitely not going to be 100% airtight like everything in cybersecurity. But with static, you're not open to as many databases. So your attack vector, your surface area for getting hacked is just going to be a lot lower. You're not always going to have an open, maybe like SQL query running to bring in new information. Any of those gets and posts that are happening on a live website, it's just another opportunity for a nefarious hacker to go out there and either like grab it and put something in between and just keyword track or listen for any credit card data, or actually break into your own store, your own system. So again, with static, it's putting a box around a lot of the live aspects of your site without really knocking down any functionality around it. And the last one is progressive web apps. Progressive web apps are funny because they keep going, I feel like, in and out of style based on the large browser vendors. Today, some of the mobile ones are using full functionality. I think iOS has curbed some of the functionality of progressive web apps, but progressive web apps bring kind of this mobile functionality to your website. So when you go on mobile web and you go to Safari browser or a Chrome browser, That's still like a mobile web. That's not a native web. You're not downloading an app. But with PWA functionality, you have access to a lot of the native options. So you can change colors on the top header of the browser. You can have offline mode. So let's say a user is in a subway and is already on your website and wants to browse around, but they lost connection. PWA functionality out of the box with Gatsby, you're going to be able to do that. You're also going to be allowed to have push notifications for, let's say, something left in a shopping cart. All these things are now accessible because of that progressive web app nature.
Yeah, I think the push notification one is super key when you're looking to re-engage with customers in a way that's not typically available through just having a web browser or website without.
And it doesn't come at the expense of like hiring an entire mobile development team
Right.
or like the time and resourcing that you're going to have an Android app, you're going to have an iOS app. And they're definitely beneficial. You do get a lot of features, but having the PWA gets you 80% of the way there for nearly free.
Yeah, agreed. There's a time and place for mobile apps, but if you want to dip your toe in, starting with the PWA approach is a really great and easy way.
Exactly. All right. So I think, so I was going to walk through like an example of a site, ratio.com. You can check it out. This is Shopify and Gatsby, but I'm going to jump because of time to our live demo. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. And then I'll start sharing again.
Yeah, I think there are a few folks in the chat who are like, we'd love to see some of the hands-on approach here. So we're getting right to that.
All right, so let me know if you can see my screen. You should be able to.
We're good.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna have up today basically the Shopify backend, the Gatsby Cloud backend. Our GitHub repo will be open. I'll go through it all from a fresh start. So actually, if you follow along, you would get the same thing as me. And then just my VS Code will also be open and we'll be working along there. All right, so to start out, we're actually going to jump into the back end of the Shopify. You create a store, you'll get this screen. And what we're going to add today is first products, actually, just because it's a lot easier to add products and it doesn't break the flow. I have products loaded in here. The example we'll go through actually comes with a CSV with, I think there's 25 products and a couple different variations. So it's going to get you about 100 different SKUs, I think. So you'll just come in here, import, add file. It's called product CSV. Again, it'll be in the Git repo we look at today. But once you load all that up, this will be present in your product catalog here. And we can start hooking up our store. So first thing we're going to do is actually add a sales channel. So this is new for us. Normally you went through kind of the CLI experience. It's much easier, quite honestly, to do it this way. I've been going back and forth with how to show, but it was just so much easier this way continuously. So we're going to add a new sales channel. Oh, oops. How do I get to the search? Sorry. We're going to go to the store. All right. Here we're going to search for Gatsby. Gatsby Cloud is what we'll be using today. We're going to add that application. Maybe. Hopefully. Okay, so now we'll keep walking through this. All right, so now we're going to add the sales channel. This will start walking us through kind of the setup wizard. I may be logged into Gatsby Cloud, so it might do that automatically for me. But in general, it's literally just hooking it up through your login. What I'm going to do now is add a site, and this will be the start. Oh, so perfect. I'm not logged in. So log into Gatsby Cloud. You can log in with VCS of your choice between GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. We support all cloud versions today. The enterprise versions we don't support, but we do support Google. So you can have an admin or let's say a user that's not a real developer, like and doesn't have VCS, they're going to still be able to log into the platform. We'll log in today with GitHub. All right, so here we can either start from kind of an old example, or we can create a new site from a Shopify starter. So we're going to do that today. We're going to create this new site from the Shopify starter. We're going to pick the project that we want in. I have a lot of projects, so I'm just going to pick this one, Gatsby Lab Performance. So this is going to be a performance plan, a Gatsby Cloud. We'll call this Gatsby Shopify Demo Live, just so we can find it, and we'll put that in my repo. Okay, so this is now going out. It's configuring the new repository. It's going to create it, and we will be able to see it in GitHub, and I'll open that up to start out. So let's go back to my GitHub here. I'll wait 2 seconds. All right, perfect. Okay, so it is actually currently already building, which is great. That worked out very well. So what happened? We went out and did all the hard parts there actually for you. So we took the Shopify secret, the Shopify API key, all of that was auto-loaded into this build and into this Git repo. So now let's look at some of that. We'll open it up. This is available at, I think it's Shopify. Yeah, it's shopify-demo.gatsby.js.com. That's going to give you this repo. It'll be at the bottom there, and you can follow along. But now let's download this. I'm already in a directory that I have, so I'm just going to grab that, clone that repo, and let's get that open. That's projects, Shopify Demo Live. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we have that open. And then let's now see if our website is built. All right, it's still building. Triggered 2 minutes ago. It should wrap up really quickly. We'll look really quick at the config file. So gatsby.js is run mainly, its plugin manifest is run by the Gatsby config. So if you come here, you can see, and I'll make this full screen, zoom in a little bit. Gatsby config, it holds the metadata for our site. So we can change out any of the title here, and we'll do that just quickly to show an example of the change. But then all the plugins that we want to load are also done here. It's done via the command line, or you can simply copy and paste the code in the config file. There are also things like the Shopify that running locally, you're going to use this environment example. You're going to fill in your own here. But again, because we're using the cloud, it's all going to be run seamlessly there. So let's take a look real quick. All right, now we're built. So built in 57 seconds. So the whole website, it was built in that time. And now when we go here, we're going to have a URL that's loaded on the Gatsby cloud. You're going to be able to demo things at it. You can move this to a real URL, but it's great for previewing here. And it's going to be available for you. Then, real quick, sorry, I wish I could get this out of my way. All right, so we have our starter. Like I said, we're pretty much, we're rocking and rolling at this point. All of the products that we have in our backend here, they are now showing up in our starter, and we have a full website. This website is broken down. It has categories. When we go to an item, you're going to be able to see information about it, and we'll go through kind of the GraphQL query that we're looking at. But this is in all its glory. It's incredibly snappy fast. Again, because of that static page, everything's already there. And we're going to be able to use this cart functionality and then checkout.
Yeah, so right now, as Dan mentioned, the cart, I believe, in your repo is currently built off of our checkout object. And so with the new cart API primitive that we've added to the storefront API, you can essentially build the exact same thing, but you're just enabling yourself to scale and have a faster response by moving it from the checkout object to the cart object.
Exactly, which is great. And we'll have that in our official plugin ASAP. Actually, we were all talking about this over this webinar, so this is actually good
Yeah.
for both things, and I think the audience gets the plus out of it. So let's go. Let's do two things and make a change. We're going to change from a coding perspective. This is actually done via HTML, so it's in our repo. We'll make a change. We will commit that, and we'll show Gatsby Cloud kick that off, get rebuilt. Code changes are, for the most part, they're either warm or full builds, which means that they tend to take slightly longer. Most of the build is getting rebuilt, which means that site in its entirety is kind of given in a package. When we make content changes from the Shopify backend, those are content changes, and they're actually done off of our GraphQL layer. So our data layer picks up that a change was made, and we're able to only rebuild our data layer, which is going to shave off minutes, hours, seconds, depending on how large the site is. It's going to really take time off your like process of this entire editing experience and make it feel near real time. So we'll take an example here. I'll kind of split screen just so everyone can kind of follow along and what I'm doing. All right, so we'll open up. We have everything broken into pages or components. Our home page, as it often is index.jsx. So let me wrap this real quick. I don't know why it doesn't come pre-wrapped, to tell you the truth. All right, so welcome to the gatsby.js and Shopify demo store. It's right here, obviously. We have our H1, so we'll change this title. This is the title of our new demo store. And again, because this is in Markdown in the actual code, it's going to be a full rebuild, but we'll still see that Cloud is going to optimize a lot of things. And things like these images, they're going to be cached, so we won't have to go through that full rebuild, hopefully. So now that we have that open, let's make some changes here. And apply these. Store title. Let's try that again. All right, there we go. Okay, so my one change, we're just going to push that to the repo. We already have Gatsby Cloud hooked up to that repo, so it's already going out. It's going to start building that. You can see new store title, the commit happened, it launched in there. We also, again, all those images are cached. We're also going to automatically deploy this to that main master branch if it does indeed pass. So if everything builds here and we're all green, we're going to automatically push that. So our changes will be live. One of the really cool things I think about Gatsby Cloud is being able to preview each atomic build. So you saw that it just finished, took 27 seconds. It then auto deployed because we have that enabled, automatic deploy is enabled, and then it deployed to the CDN in 1 second. So if we go over here, hopefully I'm gonna refresh, perfect. Our title changed here, and it only took 27 seconds. Again, one of the really cool things is each build is atomic. So the build I had before my change lives on its own URL and its own environment. And then the build I made after the change also does. So if we were to go to view build here and view build here, these are going to open atomic URLs. You can see here, build for it gets a little ugly, but this is going to be the first change I made. So welcome to the Gatsby store. And then when I open here, it's going to be that next change. So each change you make is going to be atomically represented in a Gatsby build. It's great for working, collaborating. If you mess something up, you can always go back. Version history is kind of right here in the cloud. Next, I'll go to update a product in the backend, and we'll see kind of that next type of build, which we call content or data build. These builds happen incredibly quick. So let's take an item on the homepage. So big cotton car, we'll go back to small cotton car, which is what it was originally. So again, because of obviously the beautiful, prettified back end of Shopify, any non-technical user can come in here, make changes, add anything to their store. And then when we click save here, again, this will start going back and getting built. Data update from Shopify. Once that starts building, that'll take anywhere from 7 to 20 seconds to finish, and then deploy in, again, around 1 to 2 seconds. And then our change will be present. I'll show you after this. So built in 11 seconds, deployed. We're good to go now. You can see right here from this tag, cloud. This means it was a content build built with the cloud builds. So everything we possibly could have cached, we've cached in the build process. Images, anything that wasn't changed. And then we only made change to that data layer. So we go back here, small cotton car. So this is, again, on our production URL at this point, and that change is made. So let's take a quick look over at the GraphQL query, and then that'll pretty much sum up our live demo and just getting everything from 0 to 1. Again, I think I could have done that in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and given myself a Shopify backend, Gatsby front end that's optimized out of the gate, and I could sell any item today on this. And then just like I said, a real quick at this GraphQL query. We're pulling in title, description, and you can go through side by side and kind of see all the different things that were on that CSV and in my product store. But things like variants, all of those, they're getting pulled in. And then it's as simple as applying it to our template and having Gatsby kind of, again, take that, build it, and process everything. Morgan, does anything stand out for you here? I know we have a ton of chats, ton of QA, so we can start going through that now, I think.
No, I think you covered it. I think really the key here is like how quickly you're able to get started because of the starter pack that you folks have put together. The other thing I think that you touched on earlier, which I think is really important, is the plugin side of things, right? There are a vast number of plugins that are available through Gatsby's ecosystem, and that is really essential because it's rare that you wouldn't use a plugin essentially when building your headless storefront. So yeah, I think you covered it. Maybe we can jump over into some of these questions.
For sure.
Yeah, there's a bunch here. I think so we did touch on speed earlier, and there was one question that came up actually about Lighthouse scores for Shopify and Gatsby. I don't know if you guys are assessing this on your side, Dan, but essentially on our side, Lighthouse scores are a really difficult question to answer because it really depends on so many different things, right? When you think about how many products a customer might have or different integrations they might have on the front end. But is there like one Lighthouse score that you have for Gatsby plus Shopify?
No, I would say it's the same thing. We definitely see it variations. The biggest thing is being consistent too about where you measure them. So one of the cool things about Gatsby Cloud is we're actually going to give you an output of your Lighthouse score on each build. This is going to come on our own machine. It's not perfect, but it's great that it's consistent. So one thing that I think maybe some people aren't aware of, when you do run a Lighthouse locally, a lot of it, everything on your browser, all these plugins, everything I have here is impacting your Lighthouse score. So it's not like a clean run when you run that. So if like you and your boss are fighting from across the country about Lighthouse scores and you're all running it locally, like you are looking at kind of an apples to orange comparison. It is nice that we are running this on our own build machine. It's consistent. You're going to get a pretty accurate over time, but definitely, I mean, this is 93, which is phenomenal score.
Yes.
Anything above like 90 is going to be really, really good. There's also only 100 items here. It's not like the most wildly complex build in the world. So I would kind of hope that using Gatsby and Shopify like decoupled here. Again, accessibility, best practices, SEO, all these things should be green in this case, which is great to see. But I'd say like if you are really complex and you're struggling and you feel like you're the 60s and 70s, there probably is some work you can get to be a little higher. But there's certainly diminishing margin return, like when you're going to be working from a 93 to a 95. I probably wouldn't be placing all your performance resources on moving the margin like that.
Yeah, and it's also just worth mentioning that like you're doing this assessment on the homepage. There is more to a website than the first page that you land on, right? So if you have a blazing fast homepage, but your product page is riddled with third-party API calls that are just degrading performance here, that is going to be detrimental to the performance. So like make sure you're assessing this across your site.
Definitely, and especially for e-commerce, where like you're going to have a long tail of what pages bring in
Yes.
like revenue. Your homepage is probably not going to be like super high up there when you look at the template structure versus how much traffic gets to your homepage and how much traffic gets to like your product template. It's probably going to be more heavily weighted on that. So it's definitely a great call out.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other questions that came up during the demo as well was just the difference between Hydrogen and Gatsby. And I just want to emphasize again that the whole benefit of having an API first approach is, again, there are so many different paths you can take. And so Hydrogen is one path that we're choosing to go down at Shopify, which is on the dynamic site side, right? So it's React server components and with powered by Vite. And again, it's entirely server-side rendering, whereas on the Gatsby side, and I'll let you speak to this a little bit more, Dan, but the statically generated site has a ton of benefits as well. And so it's really about deciding which path is right for you and looking at the different, starters that are out in the world and just the ecosystems built around that. So of course, when you look at Gatsby's ecosystem, as we mentioned with the plugins, there's a ton that's already kind of available to plug in and get you connected and started out of the box. But I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Dan.
I would just add on that, don't think about them like completely at odds or separate. Like eventually we'll start roping a lot of that into our framework in the plugin side as far as like the components that you're already making in Hydrogen. We're not 100% focused on e-commerce like Shopify is. We serve other purposes. There's like other aspects of the web that we focus on, like performance of things like that, of working in other content systems. Like all of that we'll still have, obviously, and then we'll be able to kind of use a lot of, I think, the React components that you're coming up with in the Hydrogen side.
There's so much overlap between all of it, but that's the beauty of the flexibility when you do go headless. There's a lot of different decisions you can make, and it's kind of figuring out what works best for the experience that you're building for your customers, right?
Exactly. All right, let's see. What about Facebook Pixel? That was just a quick one. All that can be added via a plugin. So we have a Facebook plugin. It'll give you a really easy place to just drop in your Pixel ID and go from there. And that like information will still be piped in just the same way with the Shopify that you drop in like your GA tag. It's going to be very much the same way on the front end with Gatsby. And then like the one quick question about the Google or Gatsby Cloud and stuff is Gatsby can be deployed in nearly any cloud. There's plenty of clouds out there that can handle launching Gatsby site. Gatsby Cloud in this respect, or Gatsby in this respect, was launched on Gatsby Cloud. So Gatsby Cloud is a front-end serverless infrastructure for launching just Gatsby sites. We're going to handle your build, preview, and deploy. It's a CDN. It's built on Fastly. It's incredibly fast. We have over 35 points of presence. And again, from our build standpoint, you're not going to find a faster build engine. So coupling that on one platform, I think is the best Gatsby experience, but it is just front end. So there were a couple questions. Shopify will still need to be deployed and still need to have Shopify service, and that's on the Shopify backend URL, and that's deployed there. And then your website would, again, it'd be deployed in Gatsby Cloud at your own custom domain if you choose. Are incremental builds available through the Gatsby Shopify source plugin? They are. So just using our source plugin, those incremental builds that I was showing you, those will happen automatically. They'll take, again, for most content, things like that, they're going to take 5 to 20 seconds, no matter what your changes in that, or no matter how big your website is. So let's say you already are using us, you have a massive site, let's say millions and millions of SKUs. It might take 30 minutes to an hour to do a full build. with the incremental build and the Gatsby source plugin for Shopify, any change you make like to a product that's not changing the code or layout, and it's just like a content update, those will still only take 15 to 20 seconds, which is pretty spectacular. We have 10,000 pages on our Gatsby site, like on our own marketing, and everything takes about 7 seconds to update, which is great. All right. Are there any other questions that you can see? I know there's obviously a lot of questions. One of the ones is the best way to use a custom URL for checkout. Do you want to answer that one, Morgan? Do you have a best, I guess, a best way to go about that?
Sorry, the question was the best way to go about using checkout?
A custom URL. Some of the people have been asking
URL.
that they get like mystore.shopify.com and kind of that checkout. Is there a better way to do that?
There is. There's a few different ways, and we're actually working on making this easier from a domain management perspective within Shopify right now. So I feel you. There are some workarounds that are available, and we do have them. I think it's in our starter kit or a learning kit rather is what it's called as well. But it can be, the domain management side can be complicated, especially when you're moving from the online store to a custom storefront. It's possible, and it's going to be made easier.
That sounds awesome. I mean, we were talking about this actually before. The checkout page, I think, is like pretty great looking. So definitely it works seamlessly. I don't think it has a huge impact on conversions, though I totally understand that people would want to have their own brand on it. But it definitely is, like I said, light years better than like the old PayPal option.
The domain is. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, this is something that comes up so often. And I think there was a question about this in the chat earlier that I answered, but in terms of like your own hosted checkout, you can have your own domain, but having your own hosted checkout is not something that is possible through our headless offering. And that's because we really feel like checkout is where things can really go wrong if it's not carefully managed, right? If you're looking at the potential for bot attacks, depending on your level of scale, but though we have seen bots even on smaller scale sites, if you're looking at PCI compliance and ever-changing payment processing regulations and whatnot, if you're looking at how you actually manage performance within the checkout as well, we tend to see performance degradation when you open things up to give too much flexibility. So really managing that by having a standardized checkout that is familiar for buyers is how we ensure that your conversion isn't impacted through having this hosted checkout.
That makes a ton of sense. This question is also, I think, for you. When could we possibly expect a Hydrogen beta release?
Oh, great question. So we're in a private beta right now, but we're expecting to be in a public beta in Q4. So fairly soon. Stay tuned. And I think what I can do is I can drop a link in the chat here if you want to sign up for follow-up information.
All right, awesome. 2 questions, looks like on our side. Would this integrate with Algolia? It does. We have an Algolia plugin. So like we have for most things, there's going to be a plugin available, and that will integrate on the front end side, and we'll be able to act as a search for your entire e-commerce experience. We also use Algolia at Gatsby, so we definitely love it. And our plugin is definitely first rate there. Second question, any chance of a Gatsby Sanity Shopify starter in the works? We definitely, so this is like our first really official starter in quite a while. We kind of revamped that whole program. So we will definitely be coming out with more helpful starters around like these opinionated stacks. Gatsby Sanity and Shopify definitely seems like one of the top ones. I would guess that Gatsby Contentful Shopify would be maybe the first. But again, with our data layer, a lot of the things we're doing, you can just swap out CMSs at will. You're still going to get a lot of the same functionality. And then actually, Rick has an awesome question that I don't have a great answer for today, but I'll definitely get one. The Gatsby source Shopify, it doesn't come with stock info today, which is totally correct. I read that I need to use a separate plugin for that. It's actually going to be part of our serverless functions. So what you're going to do is run a function to go grab that data from the API. We'll come out with a tutorial like legitimately in the next 48 hours about it. We already had it in the backlog, and this brought it to the forefront. but definitely Morgan and I were talking about this before. That is, I think the preferred way to do it. You load the entire site statically, and then again, a serverless call would just ask Shopify after each object was added to the inventory, how much is left. So it is definitely doable. It's not a separate plugin, but it is kind of a separate feature in the framework itself.
Yeah, it's definitely the recommended approach, right? Because inventory is the one thing that you don't necessarily want to send a customer to the cart, or rather to the checkout, only to be told this item is out of stock. So it's great to see that this is something you're already thinking about. And it's also going to be great to see once Gatsby kind of releases that tutorial. We know folks are doing it today with Gatsby, but just general guidance on how to do this effectively is going to be great for maintaining that buyer experience. Because quantity is a big one that can change fairly frequently.
Definitely. And it's actually, we do have an example of it, but it's not a Shopify store. It's something else, but I can definitely get that out there. All right. Another question. We're actually running up against time here, but I think this is a good one. Morgan asks, would headless sites be a good option for target advertising / marketing campaigns? It makes sense for us to highlight certain features for specific campaigns and limit the products available versus having like a main site. And I think that's a fantastic idea. You're going to get a lot of the benefits of having a static microsite, but you're still going to be able to have maximum control. You could have theoretically a ton of different Gatsby microsites in this case, all pulling from that same Shopify backend.
Exactly. So you have that shared source of data. So let's say you have a microsite on one end that offers 2 products and another microsite that offers another suite of products, and there are shared ones between both. You're ensuring that if inventory sells out, for example, that you're reflecting that accurately across those sites. But definitely agreed with your comments here, Dan. There's certainly benefits to offering, instead of like the standard fully packaged website that we see in commerce, but to have more targeted sub-branded sites or microsites or landing pages of sorts. So that's definitely possible in the headless space, and we see that often. Actually often we see that in conjunction with a CMS as well, where you can really enable some of your business teams to build out those microsites without needing to lean on the development team. And there's essentially a way to quickly spin those up, do some A/B testing, see what works most effectively, and go from there.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right,
Cool.
Actually, okay, so it's 12 o'clock now.
Yes.
Probably gonna have to shut this down. We still have questions unanswered. What we've been doing recently is we're gonna pull this over to Twitter, and we'll start answering some of these from the gatsby.js Twitter handle. We will tag, if we can, any users in here, and you, Morgan, if anything's Shopify related. But I think that's gonna be how we get to answering everyone.
Yeah, so there's tons of great questions in here. So thank you all for tuning in and for asking these fantastic questions. And I love that we can take this conversation to Twitter. Definitely hit us up there.
It's the best way to answer and continue this. Morgan, thank you so much for showing up today and talking about Shopify e-commerce platform with our audience. And thank you everyone for who attended.
Thanks, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.